She slammed him to the ground in front of the entire alien command deck, and the galaxy watched. The strongest warrior of the Carvel Empire had just humiliated a human lieutenant in less than 3 seconds. It should have ended there. It should have been another reminder that humanity was small, fragile, and outmatched. But then he whispered 2 words that no alien species had ever weaponized before. "You're beautiful." And everything changed. The warship Resolute Dawn floated between 2 dying stars. It was neutral territory, a place for peace talks. Or, if things failed, the beginning of humanity's extinction. Lieutenant Elias Vance stood in the center of the combat circle, surrounded by towering Carvel warriors. They were taller, stronger, and bred for dominance. Their armor shimmered like liquid steel. Their eyes glowed faintly blue in the dim light. Across from him stood Commander Zyra Kar. She was undefeated. Her species valued strength above all things. Emotion was weakness. Compassion was disease. Beauty was irrelevant. "You challenge me," Zyra said, her voice calm and cold. Elias shrugged lightly. It seemed polite. A ripple of low growls spread through the Carvel observers. The rules were simple. If Elias won, humanity would be recognized as equals in the Galactic Accord. If he lost, Earth would become a protectorate under Carvel authority. Protectorate was a polite word for controlled. The signal sounded. Zyra moved faster than sight. In a flash, Elias was lifted, flipped, and slammed onto the metallic floor. The impact rattled his bones. Before he could inhale, her knee pressed against his chest, her hand pinning both of his wrists with terrifying ease. Gasps echoed from the human delegation balcony. 3 seconds. That was all it took. Her face hovered inches from his. Her eyes burned with victory. Around them, alien commanders observed silently, already calculating Earth's surrender terms. Elias could feel the weight of her strength. He knew he could not overpower her. Not physically. But humans had never survived because they were the strongest. They survived because they adapted. He looked into her eyes. Really looked. There was something there beyond discipline. Beyond war. Something tired. Something lonely. And without planning it, without strategy, without fear, he said softly, "You're beautiful." Silence fell like gravity had stopped working. Her grip did not tighten. It did not loosen. She froze. The Carvel had no word for beauty used as admiration. In their culture, appearance meant efficiency, structure, combat optimization. But this was different. There was no mockery in his voice. No fear. No manipulation. Just truth. Her breathing changed. Slightly. Barely noticeable. But noticeable. "You attempt distraction," she said, though her tone lacked certainty. Elias smiled despite the pain. "No. I just think someone should tell you." No alien had ever spoken to her that way. Not as a weapon. Not as a rival. Not as a subordinate. As a person. Her knee lifted slowly from his chest. Around the arena, Carvel officers shifted uneasily. This was not protocol. This was not dominance. This was confusion. "You are defeated," Zyra said, stepping back. Elias remained on the floor for a second longer than necessary. Physically? Yes. Probably spiritually too. A few humans in the balcony almost laughed before remembering their survival depended on this. Zyra extended a hand. That alone caused whispers. Carvel warriors did not help defeated opponents stand. Elias took her hand. She pulled him up effortlessly. "You fight poorly," she said. "I fight differently," he replied. Her eyes studied him in silence. The council chamber doors opened, signaling the formal decision discussion. But something had shifted. Not in strength. In perception. Later, in the observation chamber, the alien high strategist reviewed the combat footage. "Explain," he demanded. Zyra stood motionless. He did not resist with force. "That is obvious." He resisted with perception. The strategist narrowed his eyes. "Clarify." He introduced uncertainty. Uncertainty was dangerous. It destabilized predictable outcomes. Human warfare history was pulled from the database. Guerrilla tactics. Psychological strategy. Art. Music used in battle. Humor under fire. Creativity under extinction threats. They were physically weaker, but mentally unpredictable. Back in the human quarters, Elias sat alone, ribs aching. Ambassador Myra Tan entered quietly. You lost. Yes. You embarrassed her. I don't think so. Myra studied him carefully. What were you thinking? I wasn't, Elias admitted. I just realized something. What? They expect resistance. They expect fear. They expect hatred. And they don't expect appreciation. Myra folded her arms. That was not part of the diplomatic strategy. No, Elias said softly. But maybe it should be. Meanwhile, in her private chamber, Zyra stood before a reflective alloy wall. You're beautiful. The words replayed again. Her species conquered 12 systems. Broke 3 rebellions. Never hesitated. Yet 2 simple human words had disrupted her focus more than any battlefield. She analyzed the sensation carefully. It was not weakness. It was unfamiliarity. Humans weaponized empathy. Not as manipulation, but as connection. And connection was unpredictable. For the first time in her career, Zyra questioned something fundamental. If humans could influence a Carvel commander without force, what else could they do? Far beyond the warship, encrypted transmissions began circulating through alien networks. Humans destabilize through emotional unpredictability. Humans redefine conflict variables. Humans may represent adaptive threat beyond physical metrics. They had come expecting prey. Instead, they found a species that refused to fight the way war demanded. On the observation deck, Elias stood beside the stars. Zyra approached silently. You knew you would lose, she said. Yes. Then why accept the challenge? He looked at the twin dying suns in the distance. Because humans don't measure victory the same way. She studied him again. And how do humans measure it? Elias smiled faintly. By what changes after we fall? For the first time in recorded Carvel history, Commander Zyra Kar did not have an immediate answer. And across the galaxy, something dangerous began spreading. Not war, not fear, but curiosity. And the Carvel Empire had never faced that before. The galaxy expected retaliation. Instead, it got hesitation. Within hours of the duel, Carvel intelligence units began running probability simulations. Every model predicted human surrender within 6 months under political pressure. Every model predicted Earth would eventually submit to military intimidation. But none of the models could calculate what had happened in that arena. None of them understood why Commander Zyra Kar had hesitated. And none of them understood why that hesitation was spreading. The War Council chamber aboard Resolute Dawn was colder than before. Massive holographic projections filled the air, human history, battle data, cultural archives. Zyra stood before the council, her posture perfect. You failed to secure dominance, the high strategist said. I secured something else, she replied calmly. A murmur rippled across the chamber. Clarify. Humans do not fight according to linear strength hierarchies. They introduce emotional variables mid-conflict. That is weakness. No, Zyra said evenly. It is disruption. She activated a projection. Scenes of humanity flashed into view, cities rebuilt after devastation, art painted on broken walls, music played during wartime blackouts, rescue workers running toward disasters instead of away. They experience fear, she continued. But they act despite it. They acknowledge weakness. Then they adapt. The strategist's eyes narrowed. All species adapt. Not like this, Zyra said. She replayed the duel. Paused at the moment Elias looked into her eyes. Zoomed in on her micro-expression shift. He was physically defeated, she said. Yet he changed the outcome. Silence. Across the galaxy, other species were watching this exchange through diplomatic channels. The Carvel Empire had always been absolute, predictable, ruthless. Now they were analyzing a compliment. Meanwhile, in the human sector of the ship, Elias was in trouble. Ambassador Myra Tan stood with her hands clasped behind her back. "You understand what you did?" she asked. "I complimented a very dangerous alien warrior. You destabilized a century of carefully structured diplomacy." Elias leaned back in his chair, ribs still sore. "With respect, Ambassador, diplomacy was already failing." She didn't argue that. Earth had been cornered. Militarily inferior. Economically pressured. Politically boxed in. Humanity needed something unexpected. "You gambled our survival on charm," she said finally. "No," Elias replied quietly. "I gambled it on truth." Myra studied him carefully. "Why say it?" He thought for a moment. "Because when she pinned me, I didn't see a monster. I saw someone trained to never be seen as anything else." Silence stretched between them. "That," Myra said slowly, "is either the bravest thing I've heard, or the most reckless." Probably both. On the training deck the next day, Zyra entered without announcement. The human soldiers froze. Elias turned slowly. "Round 2, he asked lightly. "I wish to understand," she said. "That's new." She stepped into the ring. No official duel. No witnesses required. The room emptied quickly. Elias stepped forward cautiously. "You wish to fight?" "I wish to observe." She moved suddenly. But this time, slower. She attacked in controlled bursts, testing reactions rather than overpowering. Elias adapted. He dodged unpredictably. Rolled when logic said stand. Laughed when pinned halfway. "You find combat amusing?" she asked mid-grapple. "Sometimes," he replied, slipping free in a way that made no tactical sense. "Depends on the company." She caught him again, but not as violently. "You are inefficient," she said. "We call it creative." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. And he used that second. He twisted, shifted weight awkwardly, and somehow reversed their positions, not through strength, but imbalance. She landed on her back. Not defeated. Just surprised. Elias offered his hand. Now it was her turn to hesitate. Carvel warriors did not accept assistance from weaker species. But after a long pause, she took it. And stood. The shift was subtle. But profound. The council reconvened urgently. Commander Zyra engaged in unsanctioned secondary interaction, an officer reported. With what result? She accepted physical assistance from the human. Shock spread through the chamber. That violates dominance code. Yes. The high strategist leaned forward. Or it redefines it. The room went silent. For the first time, a possibility emerged that no simulation predicted. What if strength was not absolute force? What if dominance included flexibility? What if humanity's weakness was not weakness at all, but evolution at speed? That night, Zyra reviewed more human archives. Their wars were brutal, but so were their recoveries. They invented tools mid-battle, improvised weapons from scrap, formed alliances with former enemies. They survived ice ages, plagues, global conflict, and they still wrote poetry about it. It was illogical. And yet, it worked. Her terminal blinked with an incoming message. From Elias. She stared at it for several seconds before opening it. "Dinner invitation," the message read. "Not combat. Just conversation. I promise not to weaponize adjectives." She did not understand the last sentence. But she understood the intention. She considered declining. Instead, she responded with a single word. "Explain." He replied instantly. "Humans share meals to build trust. Also because food helps us think." After a pause, she added, "Very well." Across alien communication networks, new assessments began forming. Humans demonstrate cross-context adaptability. Humans leverage vulnerability as strategic influence. Humans may convert adversaries without force. For empires built on intimidation. That was terrifying. Because intimidation only works when the opponent fears you. Humans, it seemed, were not fearless. They were something worse. They were hopeful. And hope was harder to crush. On the observation deck once more, Elias stared at the stars. Zyra approached quietly. "You seek alliance through emotional engagement," she said. "Not just that," he answered. "Then what?" He gestured to the vast darkness. "You conquer systems. We build bridges inside them." She studied him. "Bridges can be destroyed." "So can empires," he replied gently. Silence stretched again. But this time, it was not hostile. Somewhere deep within Carvel's strategic projections, a new variable appeared. Humanity, influence potential, undefined. And undefined was more dangerous than any fleet. Zyra looked at Elias carefully. "You believe your species will survive?" He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "I know we will. Even if defeated. Especially then." For the first time in her life, Commander Zyra Carr felt something she could not classify. Not weakness. Not attraction. Not threat. Possibility. And across the galaxy, ancient empires began to understand something unsettling. Humanity did not win by overpowering enemies. Humanity won by changing the game. The attack did not come from humanity. It came because of them. 3 days after the duel, long-range sensors detected something impossible. An unknown fleet emerging from slipspace at the edge of the system. Their ships were massive, dark, and silent. No diplomatic signal. No identification codes. An old enemy. The Vorath Dominion. They had been watching. The Dominion believed in one rule: eliminate potential threats before they evolve. And humanity, according to their calculations, was evolving too fast. Alarms echoed through resolute dawn. Human officers rushed across command decks. Carvel warriors armed themselves instantly. For a brief moment, old instincts returned. The Carvel prepared to isolate the human sector of the ship. Standard doctrine: protect strength, sacrifice weakness. But Commander Zyra Carr did not give that order. Instead, she said something that shocked her entire bridge crew. "Open joint tactical channel with the humans." The officer hesitated. "Commander, that violates." "Do it." On the human command deck, Ambassador Myra Tan stared at the incoming fleet projection. "They're not here for negotiation," she said quietly. Elias stood beside her, bruises almost healed. "They're here because they think we're dangerous." "Are we?" He gave a small smile. "We're human." A transmission request flashed. Carvel Joint Command Channel. Myra's eyes widened slightly. "That's new." The screen flickered. Zyra appeared. "The Vorath Dominion considers your species a destabilizing influence," she said calmly. "They intend extermination." Elias leaned forward. "That feels rude." "This is not humor. It's how we think." Zyra studied him briefly. The Dominion fleet outnumbers combined Carvel and human forces 3-1. "Then we don't fight 3-1, Elias said. Myra turned to him. "What are you suggesting?" He looked at Zyra. "You said we introduce uncertainty." "Yes." "Let's prove it." The Vorath fleet advanced in perfect formation. Their ships emitted gravitational distortions designed to cripple standard engines. Their strategy was simple: overwhelm, disable, erase. Predictable. Human engineers worked fast. "What do we have?" Myra demanded. A young technician responded, "We can't outgun them. But we can outmess them." "Define mess." "We modify our civilian broadcast satellites into signal scramblers. Flood their targeting systems with adaptive noise. Make it look like we have twice the fleet. A Carvel tactical officer scoffed. Deception is temporary. Elias shook his head. No. It's momentum. Zyra listened carefully. Proceed, she ordered. Within minutes, human satellites began transmitting chaotic signal bursts. Fake fleet signatures. Phantom weapon locks. Distorted gravity echoes. Vorath targeting systems flickered. What is happening? A Dominion commander demanded aboard their flagship. Their sensors showed fleets where none existed. Energy spikes from impossible angles. Human vessels appearing to multiply. They are improvising, one analyst said. Impossible. No species alters battlefield parameters mid-engagement. Humans do. Meanwhile, Carvel warships adjusted their attack vectors to complement the confusion. For the first time in history, their precision assaults were guided by human unpredictability. Zyra stood at the center of her bridge. Human interference creating tactical advantage of 27%, an officer reported. Continue synchronization. Elias' voice crackled through the joint channel. Commander, we're about to do something slightly insane. Clarify. We're overloading one of our smaller cruisers' jump cores. That will destroy the vessel. Not if we time it right. Myra stared at him. Elias. It won't explode, he said quickly. It will create a microfold in local space. A gravitational ripple. Zyra understood instantly. You will disrupt their formation. Exactly. Risk probability. High, Elias admitted. But that's kind of our thing. A pause. Then Zyra gave the order. Authorize human maneuver. The human cruiser Arcadia accelerated toward the center of the Vorath formation. Dominion commanders assumed desperation. Prepare to destroy, they ordered. But just before impact, the Arcadia triggered the modified jump core. Space twisted. Not violently, but unpredictably. A ripple spread through the battlefield. Vorath ships were pushed off alignment. Their perfect formation fractured. Their gravitational weapons misfired into empty void. And in that broken second, Carvel precision strikes hit critical systems. Human fighters darted through gaps that didn't exist seconds earlier. Chaos. Not random chaos. Directed chaos. Within 20 minutes, the Vorath fleet retreated. Not destroyed, but shaken. Because for the first time in centuries, their perfect calculations failed. Silence filled the battlefield. Combined human and Carvel ships held formation. Alive. Zyra exhaled slowly. On the joint channel, Elias spoke. See. Slightly insane. You risked annihilation, Zyra said. Only slightly. You altered a battlefield without superior force. We've been doing that since we discovered Styx. A faint, almost invisible change softened her expression. You are inefficient. We prefer creative. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread fast. Not because humanity won alone, but because humanity changed the outcome. They did not overpower. They did not dominate. They adapted faster than anyone expected. The Carvel High strategist addressed the council once more. Assessment. An analyst responded carefully. Humans introduce exponential uncertainty into all hostile engagements. And conclusion. A long pause. They are not prey. The strategist nodded slowly. No. They are catalysts. Later, on the observation deck, Elias stood beside Zyra. The twin dying stars glowed quietly. You fought well, she said. So did you. You did not attempt to dominate. We prefer cooperation, he replied. Why? He thought for a moment. Because when we stand alone, we survive. But when we stand together, we evolve. She considered that. In Carvel doctrine, strength is control. In human history, Elias said gently, Strength is growth. A long silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Not tense. Just thoughtful. You destabilized me, Zyra said finally. He smiled slightly. Sorry. She looked at him directly. I do not apologize for growth. He blinked. That almost sounded like a compliment. It was an observation. I'll take it. She studied him one last time. You said something during our duel. Elias froze slightly. About that. You said I was beautiful. He nodded carefully. Yes. She turned her gaze toward the stars. In my culture, beauty is structural perfection. And she looked back at him. In yours, it is possibility. He swallowed. Yes. A small pause. Then perhaps, she said quietly, your species is dangerous indeed. Elias smiled. Yeah, he said softly. We've been told that. Far beyond them, alien empires recalculated their projections. Humanity was not the strongest. Not the largest. Not the oldest. But they possessed something rarer than any fleet. They could fall. And still change the future while getting back up. And that was terrifying. That was inspiring. That was human.